Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for May 31st, 2020, recorded around 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Well, we are less now than 24 hours away from the official start of the hurricane season, and we do have a lot to talk about today. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First of all, with the latest sea surface temperature anomalies, this updated yesterday, May 30th. These maps are always a day behind. But looking now at the Nino 3.4 region, once again, which is this area roughly through here, we continue to see a decline in the sea surface temperature anomalies now, about a full degree to, in some cases, 2 degrees Celsius below the long-term average. We are heading into a La Nina base state with a more favorable Atlantic basin pattern setting up here. And this could go on to be a really active season for the Atlantic basin. Again, now with a configuration that is now starting to favor a legitimate positive AMO in the Atlantic main development region, with the MDR now actually being warmer than the subtropical Atlantic in quite some time. This is actually the first time, I believe, in a few years now that it has been warmer than the subtropical Atlantic. And if this is a legitimate positive AMO signature that's setting up what is called an AMO phase 1, which favors this area right in through here, that would really warm up the Atlantic main development region. That's going to concentrate a lot of the energy and in a sense be like a 2017 version per se. Now, no two seasons are similar, but to draw some comparisons, if you remember the 2017 Atlantic hurricane season with its positive AMO signature down here, again, not saying it's going to be as bad as the 2017 season, but there are certainly some parallels that we can draw to that and just some clues that we can look at. Like being a detective almost, you have that analogy there, and we can certainly see what's starting to now favor up across portions of the Atlantic main development region. For the first time in almost about 2 years, I do believe, being warmer than the subtropical parts of the Atlantic basin. So very important to understand there. The MDR will only continue to warm as we now progress through the month of June, which starts in less than 24 hours, as well as the hurricane season. The Caribbean is also warmer than average, along with the Gulf of Mexico, and we are just now on the tip of the iceberg of what could be a very busy season. Taking a look at the Nino 3.4 region, again, this is roughly in through this region out across here in the Eastern Pacific Basin. We've continued to see a very significant decline over the last several months or so, at least about for the past month rather. Again, we do have a little bit of a spike coming back up, but again, that is not going to trigger any El Nino. This isn't going to significantly warm. We are going to continue in this overall cooling off pattern over the next several months. This is likely to be a La Nina by the time we get into the peak of the hurricane season, and by the winter for sure of 2020, we will likely see that begin to transition into a more La Nina state and be classified as such. Now, taking a look here at the actual sea surface temperatures, this is coming off the CDAS methodology from tropicaltidbits.com. As of 1 o'clock this morning, May 31st, again, we are watching this area of the Western Atlantic right now with, we did have Tropical Storm Amanda that impacted portions of Guatemala and El Salvador and is continuing to impact that area throughout the day today. We're going to watch that area as well as an area here in the southern Bay of Campeche and the southern Gulf of Mexico. Again, but for the majority of the sea surface temperatures being favorable, it's generally west of 50, south of 30, north. This is the area that's really now favored for tropical cyclone development. Especially this area is now the most favored for tropical cyclone development as we head through the beginning of June and the start of the hurricane season. This is the area that's more favored this time of the year, given the dynamical, support and everything. Given all the support that we've seen, we are likely to see some more tropical activity, and as such, there is something trying to brew down here on the Atlantic side here over the next few days, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But again, for the most part, the Caribbean, the islands over here, the Lesser Antilles, 28 degrees Celsius water temperatures. Again, this whole area is certainly more now than supportive sea surface temperature-wise for tropical cyclone development, although there is still some really strong vertical wind shear across this region, which will continue to relax here over the next several months as we head towards peak of season. Now, taking a look here at the upper ocean heat content, this was updated today. This is the warmer water at depth, and you're really looking now for the greens, yellows, and oranges across this region. That's all the warmer water at depth. This is how deep the warmer water goes per se. And again, where you get these yellows and oranges and greens is the higher upper ocean heat content, the more latent heat release that is possible with tropical cyclones. And, typically with more, upper ocean heat content, you could typically get hurricanes and stronger hurricanes. So certainly we do have this area, obviously, out here in the Caribbean, which is always warm for this, for this time of the year. It's always going to be warm, plenty sufficient, as well as the Gulf of Mexico, of course. Again, our main focus now is the MDR out here. Again, I've talked about this here in the last several days or so, but, just because, you might see temperatures out here, or not temperatures, but no significant upper ocean heat content out here, doesn't mean that you can't get a tropical system to form out here and get stronger over here. But let's just hypothetically say something doesn't develop out here in the MDR. Let's just say hypothetically that's shut down. Well, where do the systems go? They're not going to turn out to sea like we typically see, like Lorenzo last year that became a Category 5 and turned out here and impacted the Azores. Again, if these systems don't develop out in this region, well, where are they going to develop? They're going to move further west and develop out here closer to landmass. And again, that's the area with the most landmass. That's the area where most people live here in North America. This is a problem because, again, if things don't develop out here in the MDR, they're going to end up developing over here where conditions are subsequently more favorable. So again, it's a pattern where we will likely see the MDR begin to warm up. This could be a really long season, but we're just looking at the clues. But again, we do have stronger tropical waves that have been ongoing for the past couple of years. Even Dorian, remember Dorian, that came off as a tropical wave. You look at Hurricane Florence, that was a tropical wave that came off of Africa. And these were generally in times where the subtropical Atlantic was actually a little bit warmer, and the MDR, especially in 2018, was cool, and you still had Hurricane Florence. And again, Hurricane Michael didn't even originate out here. It originated from what's called a Central American gyre, and it formed out here in portions of the Florida Panhandle. So again, very important to understand that, some of the most intense hurricanes don't necessarily originate out here. They might originate out here with so-called homegrown development. So again, it's very important to understand there is different things that are playing in to hurricanes. They don't all come from, Africa. They don't all originate there. A lot of them, especially, like Katrina, Katrina formed out here near the Bahamas and then tracked into the Gulf. Michael formed out here, south of Belize. So again, very important to understand that just because you may not have, a lot going on in the MDR does not mean you can't get hurricanes elsewhere. Again, this is only now heading into June 1st, which is the first day of official hurricane season. We've already had these strong tropical waves come off. One of them ended up going on to produce a tropical storm, which is Bertha, that hit just east of Charleston. Very important to understand that, and very important to understand that, it doesn't take a lot, especially once you start getting out here, and the MDR will certainly begin to fill in over the next several months or so. Now, taking a look here at the visible satellite, this is from the COD Meteorology website. Again, we are watching tropical depression, what is now tropical depression, Amanda, which is actually down here south of Guatemala, just off the screen here. And then we're watching this larger area of disturbance out here in the southern Gulf and Bay of Campeche for what could be developing later this week. Again, this is all part of a larger Central American gyre, which is just a general turning with the winds and lowering of pressures around Central America, the southern Bay of Campeche, the portions of the Eastern Pacific Basin. Again, this is just a term for the lowering of pressures, some cyclonic turning, and stuff like that. And what can happen is we often get, or sometimes can get, tropical cyclones to actually develop in a larger envelope. One of these little vorticity pieces can close off and become a tropical cyclone. We saw that with Amanda this morning and last night. Amanda obviously became a tropical storm right before landfall this morning. in Central America, just to the west of El Salvador and Guatemala. But again, it's very important to understand that what's going to end up happening is just because we had that tropical storm make landfall and it's now beginning to weaken as there's a lot of mountainous terrain across this area, the energy, there's still a lot of energy left over. The Central American gyre is going to last and persist for probably about a week or so. And what's going to end up happening, besides all the heavy rainfall, mudslides, and flash flooding across this region, eventually all this energy is going to bleed off into the Bay of Campeche and Gulf of Mexico. And what could be happening is we might get the remnants of Amanda and also some other vorticity spins that develop out here in the Bay of Campeche. And the Bay of Campeche is very notorious for helping because of the geography and this kind of curved part right here. This area is notorious for helping tropical cyclones develop. If we just go back to look at Franklin in 2017, that became a Category 1 hurricane before heading into Mexico. Katia also in 2017, that became a Category 2 in the southern Bay of Campeche before slamming into Mexico. These are all systems that were helped by this, by the geography here of the southern Bay of Campeche. So it's very important to understand that tropical cyclones can form as a result of this. We're already seeing a large area of showers and thunderstorms in this region associated with this broader Central American gyre. So it's very important to understand that we can and often do sometimes get tropical cyclones to form from bleed over energy. Now, speaking of Tropical Depression Amanda, right now, the wind speed's about 35 miles per hour, pressure of about 1,006 millibars. All the tropical storm warnings for Guatemala and El Salvador have been canceled. However, very heavy rainfall is expected across this region throughout the next several days or so. This is expected to remain a tropical depression all the way in through portions, a post-tropical cyclone all the way in through portions now of the southern Bay of Campeche and the Gulf of Mexico. And then whatever leftover vorticity might try to spin up if it remains over water. And this is very important because right now some of the modeling does suggest that this may not have a lot of time over water, may only have less than 24 hours of open, unimpeded water before it drifts eventually back into land here. So again, there's some reason to believe that there may not be any cyclone development from the remnants of Amanda. However, again, it is still very undetermined right now, and there's a lot to be determined over the next few days, but you generally see this is expected to become post-tropical within the next 24 hours as it passes through Guatemala, and then eventually up here as we get closer to Belize City, which is out in here. So again, this is going to likely bring very heavy rain for Belize, Guatemala, and El Salvador, and generally Central America and Mexico over the next several days or so, as this system slowly moves off towards the northwest here and eventually finds itself in the southern Bay of Campeche or the southern Gulf of Mexico, where the National Hurricane Center has actually now gone ahead with a 50% chance of development over the next 5 days, with a 40% chance over the next 48 hours over the next 2 days, as a larger area of disturbance is expected to move in across this area with several bits of vorticity that one could close off and again try to develop here into a tropical cyclone in the southern Bay of Campeche and find itself somewhere out in this region in the southern Gulf by later this week. So a lot to watch there. Again, this is the 850 millibar vorticity. I almost dropped my water there. The spin in the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground here. And again, as you start to get towards these reds and whites here, you're getting up into the higher cyclonic turning there. And again, this is actually the remnants of Tropical Storm Amanda right there, now Tropical Depression Amanda, as it continues off. Again, doesn't really show up well here in the 850 vorticity, but if you go up to the 500 millibar vorticity, or the spin in the atmosphere this is roughly about 18,000 feet off the ground and higher up in the atmosphere, you do notice that this is actually the vorticity piece associated with what is now Tropical Depression Amanda, former Tropical Storm Amanda, as this will continue to kind of ride around the periphery. And if we jump back to the 850 vort, here again, you do notice this larger area of vorticity, which again is expected to kind of generally move off towards the northwest here over the next several days and find itself somewhere out here in the southern Bay of Campeche and the southern Gulf over the next several days or so. Now, if we take a look here at the vertical wind shear, this is, coming from about 15Z this morning. just a little past 11 a.m. Again, this is actually the shear with this anticyclone over what is now Tropical Depression Amanda. And again, some of that shear you do notice is actually extending into the Gulf right now with 60 to 70 knot, 50, 60, almost 70 knots of shear. But this is expected to gradually decline over the next several days as this larger anticyclone begins to move in. And this is going to lower the wind shear across the southern Bay of Campeche and the southern Gulf and allow for some potential consolidation somewhere out in here with time. And if we go to the GFS forecast here, this is the 12Z run here. We just kind of move this out to the next 48 hours. Again, here's this larger area of vorticity. This is the 850 vorticity from tropicaltidbits.com. Again, this is the larger area of vorticity that's associated with the Central American gyre. And again, it takes a while for something to consolidate, and the GFS, of course, doesn't really consolidate anything until after hour 156, where it begins to develop something just north of the Yucatan Peninsula. In contrast, this is the European forecast model out to the hour 72 time frame, where there is a bit more consolidation right on or just inland of the coast of Mexico there in the southern Bay of Campeche. Again, this area is very notorious for helping tropical cyclones develop within no time. However, this is a larger area, and again, if we go back to the visible satellite here, we just scroll down just a little bit, you do notice this larger envelope of vorticity and energy, and the 850 vorticity definitely shows that this larger area of vorticity is kind of strung out through here, so it takes a while for things to actually close off. But if we end up moving this out until time, by the hour 120 mark, you do notice that the European model is suggesting something, and then eventually by the end of the time frame here, June 8th or so, there is something to talk about here. So again, most of the European ensemble guidances have suggested that something does develop. The GFS ensemble guidance has also shown that. The Canadian model, most of the modeling is on board that something is going to be worth talking about over the next several days or so here in the southern Bay of Campeche and the Gulf of Mexico. Again, though, what is still very unknown is where does a system develop? If a system develop, where will it go? How strong will it be? Those questions right now cannot be answered. We don't know if there's a system that is going to develop currently. So again, the best possible advice right now is to, listen to the forecast from local media, the weather service offices, the Hurricane Center. Again, those are the brilliant people there that can obviously, they're the professionals in the field. Listen to them. Local media, again, we don't know if something's going to happen. Regardless, tomorrow is the official start of the hurricane season for the Atlantic Basin, and it's always good to be prepared. So again, make sure you have your hurricane preparedness kit. If you live anywhere that's prone to hurricanes and tropical cyclones, make sure you got your hurricane preparedness kit ready, everything. Because guess what? Hurricane season starts tomorrow, whether you like it or not, and it's here. So it's time to start paying attention. There's a lot to talk about here. Again, I will be back with another video update probably tomorrow afternoon, if not sooner. If there's something to talk about tonight or so, I will be back with another video forecast update then. But until then, if nothing major else happens tonight, I'll be back with another video forecast update tomorrow afternoon. With that being said, hope y'all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening, and I will likely see you guys back here tomorrow afternoon, if not sooner. Stay safe.